don't understand why you have to be so difficult.
I'm not trying to be.
It's okay, let's just talk this through calmly.
Maturity is one of the most misunderstood psychological qualities. Many people believe maturity means being quiet, being polite, being endlessly patient, always understanding others, even when it costs you your own boundaries. From the outside, this may look calm, but psychologically, this is often fear disguised as virtue. True maturity has very little to do with surface behavior. It is not about appearing calm. It is not about sounding wise. And it is not about being agreeable. Maturity is an internal structure. It is the ability to remain emotionally organized when misunderstanding, judgment, and social pressure appear. Most people can appear mature when life is calm, when nothing challenges their self-image, when no one questions their value. Very few remain mature when their ego feels exposed. This is where the real difference begins. Immature minds react immediately. They rush to defend. They rush to explain. They rush to restore how they are perceived. Every misunderstanding feels dangerous. Every silence feels like rejection. Every disagreement feels personal. Mature minds feel these same impulses, but they do not obey them automatically. They understand something subtle but powerful. Being misunderstood is uncomfortable, but it is not dangerous. Because of this understanding, mature people do not rush to correct every wrong impression. They allow silence to exist. They allow time to pass. They allow reality to speak louder than self-defense. This is not emotional suppression. It is emotional containment. Another defining trait of maturity is the separation between emotion and reaction. Mature people still feel anger. They still feel disappointment. They still feel hurt, jealousy, and frustration. What changes is not the emotion itself. What changes is the speed. Instead of reacting immediately, they pause. And inside that pause, choice becomes possible. They do not ask, "How do I get rid of this feeling?" They ask, "What is this feeling trying to show me?" This internal pause creates regulation. This is why mature people often appear calm in situations where others escalate. Not because they feel less, not because they don't care, but because their nervous system is no longer in survival mode. Another misunderstood aspect of maturity is the willingness to be disliked. Immature people often equate harmony with safety. They avoid tension at all costs. They fear disapproval more than misalignment. Mature people understand that clarity sometimes creates discomfort. They accept that setting boundaries may cost approval. They accept that honesty may create distance. They accept that not everyone will like them, and they no longer interpret this as failure. This does not make them cold, it makes them grounded. They do not seek conflict, but they do not fear it either. They choose alignment over popularity, stability over performance. Mature people also stop performing intelligence. They do not need to sound deep. They do not use complexity to appear superior. They do not speak in abstractions to hide insecurity. They simplify rather than complicate. They listen more than they speak. They are comfortable saying, "I don't know." This absence of performance is often mistaken for lack of depth, until pressure arrives. That is when their clarity becomes visible. One of the most overlooked signs of maturity is knowing when not to engage. Mature people do not respond to every provocation. They do not enter every debate. They do not explain themselves to everyone who demands it. They recognize emotional traps. They sense when a conversation is about dominance rather than truth, about control rather than understanding. So they disengage, not because they are afraid, but because they value internal stability more than winning. In these moments, silence is not avoidance, it is strategy. Another critical difference is how mature people relate to responsibility. Immature minds swing between blame and shame. Either others are wrong or they are completely at fault. Mature people take responsibility without self-punishment. They can admit mistakes without collapsing into self-attack. They understand that accountability is not self-destruction, it is adjustment. This allows them to grow without becoming bitter, and to change without losing self-respect. Maturity also brings a tolerance for emotional loneliness. As people mature, they often outgrow certain dynamics. Conversations feel repetitive, social roles feel shallow, some connections no longer fit. This creates periods of solitude. Immature minds rush to fill this space. They seek distraction. They seek validation. They seek noise. Mature minds tolerate it. They understand that loneliness during growth is not failure. It is transition. They would rather be temporarily alone than permanently misaligned. Perhaps the most important distinction of all is this: mature people regulate themselves, not others. They do not try to control how people react, think, or feel. They understand that controlling others is an illusion. Self-regulation is power. This is why they remain grounded in chaotic environments. Not because the world is calm, but because they are internally organized. This also explains why mature people are often misunderstood. They do not advertise their depth. They do not perform virtue. They do not seek validation. As a result, they are sometimes labeled distant, cold, or emotionally unavailable. In reality, they are simply selective. They engage deeply, but not universally. True maturity is not an image. It is not a personality trait. It is a nervous system state. It is revealed under pressure. Can you remain grounded when misunderstood? Can you pause before reacting? Can you tolerate discomfort without collapsing or trying to control others? These are not talents. They are psychological capacities, and they can be developed. Mature people are not perfect. They are regulated. They are not superior. They are stable. And in a world that constantly provokes reaction, true maturity is quiet, intentional, and internally strong. If this reflection resonated with you, you're welcome to stay a little longer. The inner observer is a quiet space for understanding the mind, without noise, without judgment. If you choose to return, we'll be here.